I was 3 weeks away from saying, I do, when I found a letter my mother had written to my fiancé, hidden deep in the back of her nightstand drawer. It wasn't addressed to me. It wasn't meant for me. But once I started reading, I understood why. In neat, trembling cursive, my mother had written, "Please don't marry her. She doesn't know the truth about her father, and it's better if she never finds out." That sentence didn't just knock the breath out of me, it shattered something deeper. The floor beneath my life cracked open, and I was falling through questions I didn't even know I needed to ask. What truth? What did my fiancé know that I didn't? Why would my own mother try to stop my wedding behind my back? The rest of the letter sat heavy in my lap, unread. I couldn't bring myself to finish it that night. I couldn't even look at her face the next morning. All I knew was this: something dark was buried in my family's past. And for some reason, my mother believed it would destroy me if I ever uncovered it. Now, I had to decide, do I open that box of secrets and risk everything I thought I knew? Or do I walk down the aisle, pretending none of it ever happened? If you had asked me a month ago, I would have said my life was perfectly ordinary in the best possible way. I was 29, engaged to the man I'd loved for 3 years, and knee-deep in planning the wedding I'd dreamed about since I was a kid. The venue was booked, the guest list confirmed, and my dress lace sleeves, simple silhouette, nothing too flashy, hung quietly in my closet, waiting for its big day. His name is Alex, stable, thoughtful, the kind of man who always notices when your shoulders tense and instinctively reaches for your hand. We met at a bookstore, of all places, both of us reaching for the same old, tattered copy of The Bell Jar. He laughed, made some joke about fate, and I remember thinking his eyes were kind. Not piercing, not overwhelming, just kind, a softness I hadn't known I was craving. From the beginning, it was easy, effortless even. No drama, no games. He met my mother on our third date, and she liked him, or at least, I thought she did. She called him steady, said he reminded her of my dad. That meant something. My father died when I was 8. Heart attack. Quick. One moment he was teaching me how to ride a bike, the next he was gone. Mom never remarried. She poured everything into raising me, her only child, juggling night shifts and school drop-offs, piano recitals, and chicken soup when I had the flu. I owe her everything. That's what made the letter so impossible to grasp. Why would the same woman who once told me I deserved a love as big as I gave try to sabotage the one thing that made me feel whole? Growing up, our home was quiet. A little worn around the edges, but filled with warmth. Mismatched photo frames. A couch with a stubborn dip on the left side. The smell of jasmine tea seeping into the curtains. We didn't have much, but I never felt deprived. What we lacked in luxury, we made up for in loyalty. Mom never spoke much about Dad, but I always assumed it was because it hurt too much. She kept one photo of him in the hallway. He's young, dark-haired, his arms wrapped around a much younger version of herself, smiling like he had the world. I used to stare at that picture when I was little, trying to memorize his face. Alex asked me once what kind of man my father had been. I said, good, quiet, the kind who listened more than he spoke. That was all I really knew. Sometimes I wondered if Mom had ever dated again. She never brought men home, never even hinted at a crush. It was like she'd closed the door on that part of her life and thrown away the key. But now, after that letter, I started seeing things differently. The way her eyes lingered a beat too long on Alex when he laughed. How her smile tightened every time I mentioned the wedding. I'd mistaken it for bittersweet pride. Maybe it was something else entirely. The weekend I found the letter, I was staying at her house to help pack up old boxes in the attic. She'd finally decided to downsize, said the house was too much for one person now. It was during one of those sleepy afternoons, sun filtering through dusty blinds, that I opened the drawer in her nightstand looking for a pair of scissors. That was when I found it. A plain white envelope. No name. Tucked behind a stack of unused greeting cards and an old flashlight. My hands were shaking before I even read the first line. I didn't confront Alex right away. Part of me still hoped irrationally that the letter was old, outdated, maybe written in a moment of doubt and never delivered. I kept telling myself that if he'd read it, he would have told me. We didn't keep secrets from each other, or at least, that's what I believed. But something shifted after I found that envelope. Or maybe it had always been there, and I was only just beginning to notice. That week, I watched him closer. He didn't seem different, still attentive, still smiling when I walked into the room, but his eyes flickered when I mentioned my mother. Not enough for someone else to notice. But I saw it. The hesitation. Like there was something unspoken hovering between us. On Wednesday night, I casually asked if he'd spoken to my mom lately. He paused. Just long enough. Not really, he said, setting down his fork. Just some quick stuff about the rehearsal dinner. The lie was almost perfect. Almost. Because I'd read the date on the letter. She wrote it 10 days ago. That meant they'd spoken privately after the last time we were all together. After we'd already finalized the seating chart. After we'd laughed over cake flavors and tasted champagne samples like two people building a future. I felt the weight of every tiny moment I had trusted him without question. And suddenly, they all seemed brittle, like glass under pressure. The next night, I went through his phone. I hate that I did it. I hate that I even felt the need to. But curiosity had curdled into something sharper, something closer to desperation. There wasn't much. Alex was careful. No texts from my mom, no calls. But there was one email, archived and marked as read, from a sender named L.M. My mother's initials. The subject line was blank. The body of the message was only one sentence. I'm asking you one last time to reconsider. There was no reply. At least, not in the inbox. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling like the air had thickened around me. He hadn't told me. He'd read that, processed it, and decided to keep it to himself. And suddenly, the question wasn't just what he knew, it was why he didn't tell me. That weekend, I decided to ask him outright. We were at his apartment, sitting on the couch, a movie playing in the background neither of us was watching. I waited until he looked comfortable, until his guard was down. Did my mom ever say anything to you about not marrying me? His body stiffened so slightly I almost missed it. He didn't answer right away. Where is this coming from? He asked, voice soft but cautious. I found something, I said. A letter. In her drawer. Addressed to you. Alex closed his eyes. When he opened them, he didn't look surprised. I was going to tell you, he said. I just didn't know how. There it was. Confirmation. He'd known. She came to see me, he continued. A couple weeks ago. She asked to meet for coffee. Said she wanted to talk. Just the two of us. I listened in silence, heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear his words. She told me there were things about your father that you didn't know, he said. Things she believed could affect your future, our future. I asked him what those things were. He shook his head. She didn't go into detail, just said it was serious, that it could change how you saw yourself. She begged me not to marry you, not because she doesn't love you, but because she thought it was the only way to protect you. Protect me. The word echoed in my head like a curse. I asked him if he believed her. He hesitated. I didn't know what to think. I still don't. But I knew that if I told you, it would hurt you. And I didn't want to be the one to do that. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. This wasn't about the letter anymore. This was about trust. About the fact that two people I loved had met in secret to decide my fate without me. I didn't cry. Not then. But later that night, as I lay in bed beside him, wide awake and staring at the ceiling, the doubts began to bloom like ink in water. If my mother had been hiding something my entire life, what else didn't I know? And if Alex could lie by omission this easily, what kind of marriage were we really building? I waited 3 days before going to see my mother. 3 days of silence. 3 days of pretending everything was fine while my insides churned with questions. I kept thinking about that letter, about the way Alex had looked at me when I confronted him, like he pitied me, like I was too fragile to handle the truth. I wasn't. I just needed anyone to tell me what the hell was going on. When I arrived at her house, she seemed surprised. Not unhappy to see me, just guarded. Her shoulders stiffened, and she gave me that polite smile she used to wear around strangers. I wasn't expecting you, she said, stepping aside. I wasn't planning to come, I replied. But then I found your letter. Her face changed instantly. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. Her eyes, so often calm and unreadable, flickered with panic. You weren't supposed to see that. I know, but I did, and now I need answers. She didn't speak right away. I followed her into the kitchen, where the kettle was already on, as if she'd been expecting a confrontation all along. We sat at the table. No tea, no small talk, just silence and the truth waiting on the other side of it. I tried to let it go, she said finally, her voice thin. I told myself it was your life now, not mine. But when he put that ring on your finger, I panicked. Why? She looked down at her hands, then back at me. Because you don't know what he's marrying into. I don't even know who I am anymore, I whispered. She flinched. I never meant to keep it from you. I thought I was protecting you. That's what Alex said, too. The kettle whistled in the background, shrill and unrelenting. But neither of us moved. Your father wasn't the man I told you he was, she said. He wasn't gentle or quiet. He wasn't the one in the photograph. I froze. What? That man, your father, was someone I worked with. We staged the photo when I was pregnant so no one would ask questions. He agreed to help, but he wasn't your biological father. I stared at her, struggling to process what she'd just said. Then who was? She hesitated. He was someone I met in college, brilliant, charismatic, and broken in ways I didn't understand until it was too late. She stood up, began pacing. I was 19. He was older, in graduate school. We dated for a few months, intensely, obsessively. Then I got pregnant. And the moment I told him, he changed. Cold, distant. He said he didn't want the child. Said it was better if it never existed. My stomach turned. I left, moved back home. Told no one. Not even my parents knew the truth. They thought I'd had a fling with someone kind, someone responsible. I let them believe that. She looked at me, eyes wet. But I knew who you really belonged to, and I lived with that every day. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. What was wrong with him? I asked. She sat back down, trembling. He had a history. Not just mental health issues, though, that was part of it. He was later arrested for assault. There were rumors about things he did to women, things he never got convicted for, but always followed him. She wiped her eyes. I never wanted you to know because I didn't want you to grow up feeling poisoned by his blood. You were good, bright, everything he wasn't. I thought if I gave you a clean story, you'd have a clean life. I couldn't breathe. And the letter? What did you expect Alex to do? I hoped he would walk away. Not because I wanted to hurt you, but because I was terrified of what might happen if you had children. What if something in his DNA, in yours, passed on? What if I stood by and watched history repeat itself? Her voice cracked. I couldn't do it. Not again. I felt hot tears sliding down my face before I even realized I was crying. I'm not him, I said. You don't get to define me by the man you ran from. She nodded slowly. I know, but I've lived with this secret for 30 years. It shaped me. And when I saw you walking into the same storm, I panicked. We sat there in silence. Two women, bound by blood and secrets and fear. I just needed you to tell me, I said. I deserve that. I know, she whispered. And I'm sorry. When I left that day, the sun was already setting. The streets looked the same, but nothing else did. I had entered that house as one version of myself and walked out as someone entirely different. I wasn't who I thought I was. And now, neither was my future. The next morning, I called off the wedding. There was no screaming, no drama, just a quiet call to Alex. My voice steady, rehearsed. I told him I needed space, time to figure out who I was before I could promise myself to someone else. He didn't fight it. That's what stung the most. I understand, he said. Understand? I wanted him to be angry, to demand why, to refuse to let go so easily. But maybe he'd already let go long before I had. I sent messages to the guests, canceled the caterer, returned the dress. Each act felt like shedding a layer of skin that no longer fit. In the days that followed, I fell into a rhythm of stillness. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I simply existed, suspended in the wreckage of who I thought I was. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, that numbness gave way to clarity. I realized how much of my life had been built on stories that weren't mine. A father I never knew. A photograph that wasn't real. A love that didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. So I started building something new. I changed my last name. Not legally, not yet, but on my personal blog, my journal. The tiny places where I wrote my thoughts. I didn't want to carry his name or the shame my mother buried with it. I went to a therapist. I told her everything. The letter, the secrets, the betrayal. She didn't tell me what to feel. She just listened. And for once, I felt heard without judgment. I started walking every morning, miles at a time. No phone, no music. Just the sound of gravel under my feet and the slow, deliberate rhythm of breathing in and letting go. I blocked Alex's number, not out of hate, but because I knew if he texted something kind, something familiar, I'd fall back in. And I wasn't ready for that. Not anymore. One afternoon, I returned to my mother's house. She met me at the door, eyes cautious, unsure if she should hug me or brace herself. "I'm not here for apologies," I said. "I just want you to listen." She nodded. "I know you thought you were protecting me, but lies don't protect people. They trap them. They grow like roots around your feet until you can't move without breaking." Her lip trembled, but she stayed silent. "I'm not broken," I said, "but I need distance. I need to know who I am without your version of me echoing in my head." She looked down, nodded slowly. "I understand." And for the first time, I believed her. That night, I booked a solo trip. 2 weeks. Somewhere quiet, by the sea. No itinerary. No pressure. Just space to breathe, to unravel, to rebuild. I didn't know what healing would look like, but I knew it wouldn't come from holding on. It would come from letting go. Of the wedding. Of the man who kept secrets. Of the mother who loved with fear. And of the version of myself I had clung to for too long, the girl who needed everything to make sense in order to feel safe. She was gone now, and in her place stood someone else. Not complete, not certain, but awake. It's been 6 months. 6 months since I opened a drawer and found a letter that changed everything. 6 months since I canceled the wedding, left Alex, and started the hardest journey of my life. Figuring out who I am without the stories that were written for me. I wish I could say it was all empowering from the start. It wasn't. There were nights I curled up on the floor, clutching the wedding invitation I never sent. Mornings when the silence in my apartment felt like punishment instead of peace. But little by little, something shifted. I began to feel proud not for being strong, but for being honest. For finally stopping the performance and choosing the truth, even when it burned. I still see my mother, though less often. Our conversations are cautious, tender, like walking through a house full of old memories we're not ready to throw out. She's trying. That matters more than I expected. Last week, she handed me a folder with my real birth certificate inside. No ceremony, no explanation, just quiet surrender. That night, I sat on my balcony and stared at the name of the man I'd never known. I Googled him. He died 4 years ago. There were articles, small, local stories about his arrest. One line stood out: repeat offender, multiple restraining orders, unconvicted assault. And suddenly, the fear in my mother's eyes made a little more sense. Not excusable, but understandable. As for Alex, he reached out once. An email. "I'm sorry. I should have told you. I thought silence was the kinder choice. I was wrong." I never replied. Not because I hate him. I don't. But because the version of me that loved him belonged to a life that doesn't exist anymore. I've started dating again. Nothing serious. But I've stopped looking for someone who will complete me. I'm already whole. A little cracked, maybe. But whole. Last weekend, I met a group of women through a writing workshop: divorcees, late bloomers, survivors. We talked about loss, love, and the strange freedom that comes with starting over. I told my story. They didn't flinch. They nodded. One of them said, "Sometimes the truth doesn't set you free right away. Sometimes it breaks you first." She was right. The truth wrecked me. It shattered the image I had of my family, my relationship, myself. But in that wreckage, I found something I never expected. My voice. Not the voice that says what's polite, or safe, or expected, but the one that says, I deserve a life that's honest even if it hurts. If you're reading this and you're sitting on your own version of that letter, whatever it looks like, I want you to know. You're allowed to ask the hard questions. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to rewrite the story. I didn't lose a fiancé. I didn't lose a family. I just cleared the way for the woman I was always meant to become.